So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Say the Word, Reparations, Tubman and Tutu, the Struggle for Reparative Justice, a program of the Episcopal Diocese of New Jersey and its Reparations Commission that has been transformed from a task force. We couldn't be more timely with regard to this program because just a couple of days ago, on March the 23rd, for example, the Episcopal News Service reported that the Episcopal Church has a proposal before it to form a new Episcopal coalition for racial equity and justice. And in that process, the opportunity is for us to engage in this reparative work, in this restorative work, in the work of grappling what it means to work towards conciliation, reconciliation, reckoning, and justice. So rather than say congratulations to the Diocese of New Jersey, let us all be thankful for the work that you all are doing, along with others in the Episcopal Church, to lift this work up both in your faith communities, your congregations and networks, but also the work that you're doing in the public square. This evening, we're fortunate to have with us a presentation by Ms. Ivy Avery, who's a reenactor, and we'll look at the video shortly. After the video, we'll hear from Dr. Christopher Fisher from the College of New Jersey, and we will be able to engage him with some Q&A, some questions and answers. And that will be followed by a brief presentation, an overview of the museum, the Harriet Tubman Museum, presented by Pastor Harold Harris. So let me go ahead and give you a brief introduction to Ms. Ivy Avery. Ms. Ivy Avery is a retired educator with a total of 35 years in education. And she received a master's degree in education from Central Michigan University in 2000. She also has an extensive background in theater, starting with the drama club at Trenton High School in the 60s, continuing in college at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Spelman Morehouse Players in Black Image Theater, which was a local theater company in the Atlanta community. And upon returning to Trenton, Ms. Avery worked with the Super Bad Theater Company, affiliated with New Jersey Broadcasting Company and Players Company of Trenton, founded by the renowned playwright Don Evans. She was the co-founder of Morning Glory and Sassafras Productions, a theater company that presented African-American cultural programs. And she has also performed in original one-woman shows about the lives not only of Harriet Tubman, but Madam C.J. Walker, Hattie Daniels, and Sojourner Truth. Allow us to open our hearts and our minds and lean in and observe fully the video presentation in which we will get to see Miss Ivy Avery in her reenactment of Harriet Tubman.
Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord to be free. To the millions of black people kidnapped from their homeland, forced into slavery, treated unfairly and inhumanely, you deserve your just due for working from sunup to sundown for no pay, for building a nation with no restitution, for raising a nation of children who were not your own. You deserve payment in full. America's 400-year-old debt is past due. enslaved Africans, contrary to what some history books would have you believe, did not accept the conditions of slavery without resistance. Remember the slave revolts of Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, and Nat Turner. And then, of course, the thousands who fled on the Underground Railroad, a network of people working together to get black people to the north to freedom. The most famous conductor of all was Harriet Tubman.
Thank you, Elder. Thank you.
Come this way. Come this way. Come on.
Yes, Elder. Thank you, sister.
Come on. You can make it. You can make it. You can make it. Please.
Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus. Steal away home. I've got long to stay. Come on down, Elder. Come on down, Elder. Help her there, sister. Help her. Oh, Lord. All right, stay right there. All right now. My name is Harriet Tubman. Y'all know who I am. Now, I've come for you. You've made that decision. You want to go to the north. I've taken many to the north, but it's a dangerous trip. The slave hunters are going to be out looking for you. Soon as they find out that they missing some of their enslaved workers, you know they gonna be looking. And them slave hunters are mean, and ain't no telling what they'll do to us if they catch us. So I brought the elder with me here today.
Yes, Lord.
She gonna say a prayer to get us on our way. We need
Lord.
prayer.
Yes, Lord.
Yes.
Lord, we come to you. You done carried us a mighty long way, Lord. You done carried Harriet. We done had many trips. We ask you to protect them. Protect these peoples right now going on this trip. Protect them from the dogs. Protect them from all evil, seen and unseen. Dear Lord, you know you can cover them. Cover them, dear God. Help them to make a safe trip all the way where they going, and help them to live a good life and to tell their story to the next generation and the generations after this. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for all that you have done for us thus far. And we remember those who came before us. We never forget those who came before us, so that we have a story to tell. Can everybody say amen?
Amen. So the elder's gonna stay behind. She gonna make her way back. They're not gonna bother her when she get back. Thank you, elder. Thank you.
You're welcome. Safe travels, Harriet. God bless you for everything that you're doing for the people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, come this way. Come this way. We're going this way. You're too far behind. You must keep up. You must keep up with me. Quickly. Ain't no telling when this slave hunter's gonna come. Everybody all right? Everybody all right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Here, just clearing right up here. Everybody all right?
Yes.
You've been doing a great job. We're almost there. Just a little while longer to go. And then we'll be at our safe house to stop where we need to be. Everybody all right?
Yes.
Miss Harriet, I was tired. My bones is aching. I just can't go any further.
What you mean?
I can't.
What you mean you can't go no further? We done come this far. Listen to me. I can't let you stay here and I can't let you go back. Now what's gonna happen if you go back? They're gonna make you tell about all of the folks that helped us all on this Underground Railroad, and I can't have that. Listen to me now. Would you rather die by the white man, or would you rather die by me? You gonna live free, or you're gonna die? What's it gonna be?
She gonna be all right. We gonna make it. We gonna make it. We going.
All right, because I can't let nobody go back. Come on now.
This part of the trip was over, but approaching a safe house was always a risk. Harriet had to be careful to keep her passengers safe. Sometimes, the last few steps to the safe house were the most dangerous. She had to make sure that the people at the house were ready and able to take them in, hoping nothing had gone wrong and praying for safe haven and rest. Would there be a welcome? The person who opened the door would be either their salvation or their demise. Beckoning to her weary passengers, they are thankful for this rest stop and all the others they encountered along the way. Thankful for that network of people working together to get them and others safely to the north.
When the Europeans came to this country, they wrote down how they wanted things to go. They had something called the Declaration of Independence. It said all men are created equal and that there was liberty and justice for all. Well, now, they meant for all except the black folks that they had brought over here from Africa to do all of this work they had on these plantations as they was becoming wealthy. I knew, though, even as a child, that black folks deserved to be free. We was human beings with hearts and souls just like they was. And I knew we deserved to be free, but I was just a child. What could I do except for do the work they told me to do down on that plantation? And that's what I done. As I got older, I heard about folks, black folks, escaping from the South, making it all the way to the North to freedom. But I didn't know how they did that. I was still a child. And then I heard about the Underground Railroad. Well, what was that? That was a way folks was making it from the South to the North. It was a network of people working together. Sometimes there was white folks, mostly Quakers. Sometimes there was even free black folks working on the Underground. I wanted to get on that Underground Railroad. Well, I got my chance. I must have been about 20, 21, I don't remember. But I got my chance. I learned about a route that I could take to the safe houses to get to the North. And I took my chance and I made it all the way from Dorchester County, Maryland, all the way to Pennsylvania. Oh, when I crossed that line, I was free. Oh, the sun shining down on me felt like liquid gold. I was free, yes. And I worked. I got paid. I was saving my money, but I was sad. I was thinking about my mother and my father, my brothers and my sisters, people that I knew still down in the South, but what could I do? What could I do? I barely made it to the North myself. Well, I'm going to tell you how I did it. The Lord come to me, and the Lord said, Harriet, You must go back. You must go back and help others to be free, and I'm going to help you. Well, now, when the Lord say he wants you to do something, and the Lord say he's going to help you, well, then you better do it. And I did. That's why I made so many trips down to those southern places, and I did get my mother and my father and some of my brothers and my sisters, because I always believed that we deserved to be free. And when the Civil War broke out, I was right there with them Union soldiers. I wanted to do anything I could because they said that Civil War was going to end slavery. But after the Civil War, things were still bad. The black folks really didn't have no money, nowhere to go. Some of them even had to go back and work for them same plantation owners. They had no resources, no money. I think what y'all call it now is reparations. Never got no reparations. And when folks have been in a bad condition, they need help to get back on their feet, to get up and make a way. Well, after the Civil War, General Sherman, he said he was going to give land to the black folks. He had confiscated all this land from the Confederates. Oh, it was thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. And he put forth something called the Field Order 15. Now, what that said was this land was going to be divvied up between black folks so they could get a good start. Some of them would even get a mule. Well, that didn't last long, because after Abraham Lincoln died, President Andrew Johnson, he decided no, the black folks wasn't going to get no land. He gave the land all back to them plantation owners. Some of them even got reparations for lost property. Oh, my Lord. There ain't nothing fair in that. Wasn't nothing fair for the black folks. Now, I had a house in Auburn, New York. I had benefactors, because people know, they knew what I did on the underground, and folks helped me. So I had a house in Auburn, New York, and it became a boarding house, because folks used to get that far up in Auburn. They didn't know who to see or what to do. I took them in, let them stay with me, and then we had a laundry. We did cooking, cleaning. Some of the men that came, they was carpenters. So I taught them a lot about how to make a way out of no way without any help. Talk about fair. I never did get my pension from being a soldier in the Civil War. You know what they said? They said I wasn't a man, so I couldn't be no soldier, so I wasn't going to get no pension. I never got my just due. And there's nothing fair in that. Now, I married a second time. And my husband, Nelson Davis, he was a soldier also. And after he died, I was able to get his pension, but never mine. They gave me a small stipend for being a nurse. But the black folks, they never got their just due. I never got my just due. I don't know what's happening in the world today, but I know that black folks is owed a lot.
I'm in charge of the Underground Railroad. Oh, yeah. My name is Harriet. I'm in charge of the Underground Railroad. Oh, yeah. Don't be afraid. Come on in, have a seat, drop your load on the Underground Railroad. Oh, yeah.
Please join me in expressing gratitude to our reenactor, Ms. Ivy Avery, and also the collective of actors who, along with Ms. Avery, divined the spirit and the history through their own gifts and talents that God gave them to act, and also to bring forward our understanding of the past into the current and what it means for the future with their prophetic theological imaginations. They laid the foundation for us this evening to hear from Dr. Christopher Fisher, in his presentation, he will historicize Harriet Tubman and allow us to grapple with the questions that are raised not only from the reenactment, but the life and the legacy of Harriet Tubman. And in that presentation, we will learn more about that which should inform the work of this commission, the work of the diocese, and the work of the people of God. Dr. Christopher Fisher is an associate professor of history at the College of New Jersey in Ewing, New Jersey. He earned a BA from Rutgers College and his PhD in history with a focus on US policy from Rutgers University in 2001. His areas of expertise are the United States in the 20th century, Cold War culture and diplomacy, United States in the world, American empire and imperialism, African-American history, and racism and race relations in the United States. His recent publications include The History of Social Movements from 1960 to 1980, an article that appears in the edited version of the Encyclopedia of the Modern World. He also has an article on debated Vietnam, Fulbright, Stennis, and the Senate hearings in the Review of Pacific Historical Review. And then too, he also has an article on the Cold War in the Review of Pacific Historical Review. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christopher Fisher, and we're grateful for what we will hear from him this evening. Dr. Fisher.
Well, I got to say, it's difficult to follow such a wonderful reenactment by Miss Avery. We have so many people who are so talented in Trenton and the surrounding area, and I found it to be a real pleasure. Please let me thank Canons Duncan and Buchanan, and Reverend Winder, and members of the Episcopal Diocese Reparations Commission for inviting me to provide some historical context on that relationship between Harriet Tubman's life and the question of reparations in the United States. I should say that I'm glad we had a historical reenactor tonight, because it's difficult to comprehend the fullness of Tubman's work and its meaning to the United States. I fear actually that my efforts to do justice might not be sufficient. So we're lucky to think about her through the arts, because that might be a truer appreciation of Tubman's magnitude. I should also commend the Commission for their approach to these issues, or rather the issue of reparations, which clearly recognizes that it is less about something obtained materially, although that is important and that does matter, and more so about addressing the question of justice. Whether that outcome, or rather that just outcome, is reparative or restorative matters only in its absence, as either would suffice. But it raises the question of whether justice can be restorative or reparative, and who has the responsibility for making the victims of abuse and the indignities whole. Now, I don't have an answer to those questions, but I do know that in substance, they call for a historical response. You see, in order to act in the present, we must confront the past. And that, I think, is where Harriet Tubman matters. And the commission is right to focus on her. To anyone who sits in the pews of the Episcopal Church on Sundays, certainly our little church in Ewing, the significance of Harriet Tubman's work would be readily apparent. The Episcopal Church preaches loving our neighbors as ourselves, fellowship, and serving others, and sharing in the healing and absolving power of our Creator. Those expectations, really principles, frame Harriet Tubman's life for reasons that were personal, as well as practical, as well as existential. As the reenactor points out, born into slavery circa 1821, at a time when they didn't think it was even important to record the date of birth for people who were enslaved, in Dorchester, Maryland, and named Araminta Ross at birth, Tubman experienced the slow social death that defined the institution of slavery in the United States. Not only was her life governed by the human rights insult of having no rights, even to her own body by the law, but she also endured the loss of close family members, siblings sold away to distant farms, and separation from her parents, who were able to purchase their freedom. Her father manumitted, then purchasing her mother. She witnessed all of that, but not her own liberation, not her own freedom. The suddenness and finality of the absence of people under slavery made Tubman acutely aware at a young age of the preciousness of family and community. And when Tubman suffered a head injury at a young age by an overseer who rented her for work from her enslaver, it was her parents, free but living outside her farm, who helped nurse Tubman back to health. The injury left Harriet with disabilities that would plague her for the rest of her life: narcolepsy, epileptic episodes. But recovery impressed on her the importance of family and community, and how love might be more than a noun. It could be, as Reverend Thomas says at St. Luke's in Ewing, when talking about the Greek word agape, while preaching about the beloved community, love doesn't just have to be a noun. It could be a verb that inspires action. That understanding of love, which is about service as much as it is about affection, is what activated Harriet Tubman's work on the Underground Railroad. When she married John Tubman, a free man in 1844, and faced being sold far away after her enslaver's death in 1849, Harriet made her first journey on the Underground Railroad to Philadelphia. She did it alone. Yet, in isolation, pain, she realized not just the horror, the sadness, but also the irony of leaving her loved ones to save her relationships. And it proved too much for Harriet to bear. So she made her first journey back into the South to recover her brother Moses from Maryland. As Harriet told her biographer, and this is around 1903, I had crossed the line of which I had so long dreamed. I was free, but there was no one there to welcome me in the land of freedom. I was a stranger in a strange land. And my home, after all, was down in the old cabin quarter with the old folk and my brothers and sisters. But to this solemn resolution, I came. I was free, and they should be free also. I would make a home for them in the North, and the Lord helping me, I would bring them all there. From 1852 to 1859, 2 years before the start of the Civil War, Harriet makes over 17 trips into the slave South, freeing as many as 300 people, including family members, and bringing them first to New York and then to Canada once the US Supreme Court rules that no Black person can be a US citizen in 1857 during the Dred Scott decision. Harriet's acts of liberation, which could be seen as active love, was in many ways selfless because she couldn't rescue all of her family members, nor could she salvage her marriage with John Tubman. However, as a conductor on the Underground Railroad, a person who abolitionist leaders like William Lloyd Garrison began calling Moses for her effectiveness, she engaged in what we might consider the truest expression of reparations, restoring the humanity to people who had been robbed of that very same humanity by the institution of slavery, and robbed of that humanity at birth with no consent. What could be more loving and restorative than making people whole in the most objective sense of the word? Moreover, it invites us to consider that reparations does not have to be a request, that there is no mandate that requires the powerful to consent and give relief as an act of kindness, but that reparations might be self-initiated, and that the whole story of slaves emancipating themselves and not waiting for the benevolent act of people like Abraham Lincoln was reparations in real time during slavery, not its potential and not hypothetical. Yet, if we see Tubman's work on slavery as a manifestation of love and an example of what reparations resembles, when we see it at the local level where it is self-initiated, what are we to make of her efforts during the Civil War, where she served as a spy in the Confederate South, a scout, a commander of US forces at the raid, in a raid at the Combahee River in South Carolina in 1867. I'm sorry, in 1863. And a resettlement agent for the Lincoln administration and the Johnson administration in Port Royal, South Carolina in 1867. What are we to make of all that? Harriet's service to the cause of ending slavery during the war and helping slaves make a life after their bondage continued the work of healing the deep wound of slavery. Indeed, her efforts to be a good neighbor compelled her to do and to take the little money she received as a nurse for the Union during the Civil War and loans that she garnered from the AME Zion Church and built a home for the aged and indigent Blacks that was later called the Harriet Tubman Home. It was she initially named it after John Brown in honor of him, who she considered a friend. But his memory was too incendiary, so they named it after Harriet Tubman herself. But she builds that in Auburn, New York in 1886. At the very end of her days, when Tubman was revered as a symbol of slavery's end and a living manifestation of the principles of self-determination enshrined in the Constitution and the Declaration of the United States, and an icon of the rising movements for women's rights and African-American leadership. Harriet Tubman never stopped giving. Speaking on the lecture circuit with Susan B. Anthony and giving counsel to the National Association of Colored Women at their founding meeting in 1896. Tubman encouraged a whole new generation of leaders to give boldly, and to give selflessly, and to give everything. When Tubman died at the age of 91 in 1913, the very same year that Rosa Parks was born, no one questioned her significance in shaping the realm of possibilities available for loving actively and creating the good world one might imagine. The lessons of Harriet Tubman's life are overwhelming, especially as we consider the meaning of reparations in a time of hyperpartisanship and an all-out assault on historical memory in certain parts of the United States. Rather than waiting for the world to make the crooked straight, as it says in the Gospel of Luke, we should be the authors of our own destiny. It is in that act we should remember that the task is not impossible, because we walk in the footsteps of humble giants like Harriet Tubman. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. I appreciate your presentation tonight, giving us some things to think about, and also providing a context for our grappling. We have the chat here, and I'll be asking questions from the chat for the next few minutes. But since there are no questions right now that have come up in the chat, let me take this opportunity to ask you if you briefly would tell us. So we have this commission in the Diocese of New Jersey. We have work going on in the public square in the state of New Jersey. What would be, if you had an opportunity, let me start over. If you had an opportunity to give counsel and provide 3 points in terms of what the people of the Episcopal Church and the people of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, should do, given that which you know and have spoken to, what would those comments be? What would the counsel be? What would the wisdom be that you would proffer?
Well, I think it starts with exactly what Miss Avery did so well. First of all, we got to capture those stories, the stories of local people and their history that had been lost to them. And then we got to tell it. I think that's really important because part of reparations is not denying the memory, right? I mean, that's an important part of it. Then after that, we have to figure out a way to take that history and make it empowering, right? By bringing it to the youth, by letting them know that they're connected to it, and by sort of teasing out all of the sort of big principles, the big lessons, kind of like, Harriet Tubman's life that you see in it. Then you got to let such people be empowered, because we all know that we cannot depend on government and we can't depend on benefactors, right? Which means, and this to me is the lesson of Harriet Tubman's life, you can't wait for progress. It's the same thing that Martin Luther King said, right? That you can't wait for people to arrive at that moment at which they realize the ethics of making all people feel like humans and recognizing their humanity. You got to make it happen. So I would start with memory. I would start with making sure that we tell those stories. Then I would work to show people how they can take those stories and take the ideas in those stories and the lessons in those stories and use it to activate their own lives.
So
that might be a bit too abstract for some people.
No. We're gonna push it, because in order to engage in the way that you're talking about, we need theory, we need practice, that engagement of praxis is that which is transformative,
Yes.
liberative, which is what it means to be a Christian.
Yes.
And as we're in the season of Lent and we're reflecting on what it means to return back and face God and our neighbor, and then come out in the season of resurrection, which is a form of liberation, transformation, and renewal. So yeah, so we need to be abstract so that we can be concrete.
Yeah.
To be concrete without the theory is not a good thing in and of itself. So let me ask this question. You just said something regarding the importance of the ethics, grappling with the ethics of what it means to make people human, right? The ethics of what it means to make people human. And you opened up with the question of whether or not justice can be reparative. Could you place those 2 points that you raised in dialogue with the season that we're in? The season that we're in liturgically, so that when we come out of Easter, we know what our work is.
Well, I think it's important, right? I mean, I think it's important for all of us to reflect on how, what's the right word? How insufficient we are, the ways that we don't measure up, right? And the ways that in not measuring up, right, we confront our frailties, our sinfulness, right? But in doing so, recognize how we're all connected in being human that way. And I bring this up because one might take what I'm saying as saying that this is work, whatever reparations is just work that Black people need to do for Black people. And that's not my point at all. Because I think reparations needs to happen in concert with reminding America that they should never forget the institution of slavery. And if they take their principles seriously, one, they should recognize how we're all living in its shadow, right? There are some people who have benefited from it. And if they're really serious about seeing themselves as a child of God and a citizen of the United States where all people matter, they should care, right? There's work that needs to be done in the white community, just like there's work that has to be done in the Black community, right? Part of it is opening their hearts to be empathetic, right? Because you can't, right? I mean, how do you restore something that's gone, right? I mean, that's literally the conversation that we've been having since at least the 1980s when we started really talking about reparations. How do we restore something that's been gone? And I'm not saying we shouldn't try. There were real, as the enactors pointed out, there were real material losses that have been generational for African Americans. But I think that that's only one part of the problem, because I think the damage done by slavery is deeper than just what we don't have materially, right? The damage you see in a lot of communities where the majority of people are African Americans. So how do we get them, how do we get as a community lift them up? Yes. And that requires them to do some work, right? Just recognizing their own power, but it also requires us as empathetic people to live our rhetoric, right? You are my neighbor, and I should love you as myself. So when people sort of dismiss out of hand this question of reparations, I have to question how seriously they take that idea of being a neighbor.
Dr. Christopher, which parish did you say you're a member
of? St. Luke's Episcopal in Ewing.
Well, I just want to lift up that your proclaimed word this evening in the rich theology grounded in your understanding of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and its intersection with your professional vocation is a very profound illustration of what it means to see and witness and hear the ministry of the baptized. Having said that,
Yeah, we have some good questions out there. I see it. If I'm sorry, Reverend.
No, you do. So I'm just setting up that context.
Yeah.
So
these are great questions.
What questions do you want to answer?
Well, you know, I think I can only see so many. I see the last one.
But let me just let's go with that. Let's go with that last one, because that was one that you touched upon.
Yeah. How do you let people be empowered?
Yes.
Right. Especially in light of systemic racism. At the College of New Jersey, I teach the history of race and racism in the United States. And I spent a lot of time talking about institutional and systemic racism. And they're useful tools to understand the way in which power is coordinated, right, in order to shape people's destiny. But people are still in control of their destiny. And this is one of the things that I try to tell my students. Systemic racism is real. People race you, they define you, but you still exist as an individual. And I'm not saying you can fight against every force. That is not my point. This is not a libertarian argument. All I'm saying is that we also have the ability to remind people of their own agency, right? Little though it may be, right? That they exist as individuals inside that institution. I think that's the beginning of a personal awakening.
Yes.
And personal awakening is really important for people to find those resources within their lives, right? To exist in unity and fellowship with everything around them and improve their life, right? So that's the reason why I said this may seem a little too touchy-feely. I get it. But particularly for the students that I teach, I don't want them to think that just because there's a systemic system of systemic racism, that as individuals, they don't matter.
Yes.
I don't want to crush them that way.
Well, Dr. Fisher, I think that, first of all, you know, we're Episcopalians, and our three-legged stool is tradition, right, scripture, and reason. And so you've given you've touched upon all of those this evening. A couple of other questions that we have in the chat actually perhaps would be in the purview of our next couple of speakers. And I just want to thank you, and I want to commend the commission for inviting you. And I hope and pray that the commission will bring you back again, because action needs to be grounded in solid theory. Please join me in expressing gratitude for Dr. Christopher Fisher, and for his scholarship, and also for his participation in the local Episcopal parish that he's a member of. Thank you so much, Dr. Fisher.
Take care. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. Be well.
Yeah, and stay on. We're almost done. So next week, I want to recognize Pastor Harold Harris, who's the pastor of the Macedonia Baptist Church and a trustee of the Harriet Tubman Museum in New Jersey. But Pastor Harris, I want to ask you, as you talk about the museum, there's a question in the chat that we need you to answer. And part of that question is this. The question is, I know the Harriet Tubman Museum opened in Cape May. It may not be terribly long ago, but how active was Harriet Tubman in the state of New Jersey? So as you speak briefly about the museum, would you answer the question of how active Harriet Tubman was in the state of New Jersey? And then a couple of other questions I'm going to leave in our closing with our co-chairs with regard to the plans of the commission, and also question regarding some of the work in the public square. So Pastor Harris, without further ado, let me be quiet because I want to make sure you have enough time to talk about the museum and to speak about Harriet Tubman's legacy in the state of New Jersey. Pastor Harris. Pastor Harris.
Is he on the call? I don't see him.
Okay, no worries. We all should know that, we should all visit the museum. We should be supportive of the museum. We know that it exists. And then there's a point of research for each of us to go to the museum or to do other research with regard to Harriet Tubman's legacy within the state of New Jersey. So I'm going to bring forward our co-chairs and ask them if they would speak to in addition to sort of closing us out, to speak to the question that Jocelyn White has posed to everyone, which is, what are the plans of the Episcopal Reparations Task Force? And then also, given the work that the task force has done, as not only participating in the network, but animating the network, being leaders in the network of organizations, churches, and community to do this work around reparations in the state of New Jersey. So Canon Buchanan and Dr. Bach, would you all come forward and answer those questions and close us out?
Sure. Thank you, Reverend Widener, for being our facilitator today. The reparations work in the Diocese of New Jersey started in earnest in 2021. We had a resolution that passed at our diocesan convention, and we convened about 21 people within our diocese, both lay and clergy, from diverse backgrounds, with the understanding that they have to have had anti-racism training so to underpin this work. So we worked for a year. We were divided into 4 major initiatives that we looked at. One was around education and engagement, which forums like these are an example of. The other was finance, because we said, at some point we are going to have to think about what may be the financial impact of our reparations work. The other was around history, and the other advocacy. So in last month, we were commissioned as a long-term ministry within the diocese. And what we've done with regard to our advocacy is that we've been aligned with a larger coalition of faith-based and nonprofit organizations within New Jersey called the New Jersey Faith Allies. And through that effort, we've had 4 rallies. We've been to the State House. We have called our senators and assembly people, and I put in the chat that link and ask you all also to reach out to your elected officials at 400yearsnj.org to ask them to pass a reparations bill in the state of New Jersey. We were also fortunate enough to have a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor a month ago, and she was also very supportive of this action. So that's what you as citizens can do, is to encourage your elected officials to pass this legislation. We were hoping we would be the first state rather, but California beat us to it, and we're hoping to be the second to pass a full reparations resolution in the state of New Jersey. The other thing that we did and are continuing to do is that, as mentioned by Dr. Fisher and as illustrated by Ms. Avery, history is important. So we are in the process of hiring a research historian for the diocese to address this issue, a part-time one based on the budget that we got. But we are long-term committed to this work, not only to the history and understanding our role as the church in New Jersey with regard to the enslaved people. We've been looking at our historically African American congregations and their relationships in the many towns that we have within the state. So those are the areas that we're focused on and will continue to do in the next months ahead. Again, education and engagement, history, advocacy, and also, looking at how we can imbue that in terms of our liturgical life. So those are the plans that we have going forward. And to that end, we invite you next week to the other half of our presentation, which will be on Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We hope you'll join us for a similar presentation as we move forward.
Thank you, Cannon Buchanan. And Dr. Bach, do you have anything to add as co-chair?
No, but I think that Dr. Fisher said something that really stirred us, and that was that we should capture the stories, capture the local stories, and then make sure that we tell those stories. Hey, there's Chase. and tell those stories. And I think that is one way that we will be able to engage the whole diocese to understand how compelling and how urgent reparations are. There's a real need, and as Ivy Avery told us, it's really long overdue to make any amends for the sin of slavery. And so I think that's going to be the exciting part, where we're going to, in our budget for the Reparations Commission, is to bring to life the stories of our history. And so it's good to hear Dr. Fisher confirm that that's the right path that we should be considering. And as Annette said, the focus this year is really heavily on finding out the history.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Bach, and I thank you, Dr. Buchanan. Thank you, Dr. Fisher. Thank you, Ms. Avery, and the cohort, the company, the acting company that accompanied her in the powerful documentary. Thank you all for being present in the season of Lent, in which we are grappling with what it means and how we turn back to God in order to reconcile ourselves to God and our neighbor. I thank everyone for this time together. And I wish and pray each of us that we continue to have a holy Lent. And we have the opportunity, as Cannon Buchanan said, to come together again for part 2 of Tubman and Tutu. Please keep your emails open for updates on the second offering. And with that, have a wonderful evening.